One ancient Roman building overshadows all the others, and it still dominates the skyline. It's 15 stories high. It covers a massive area. It's the Colosseum. Crowds came to see gladiators and criminals fight. Thousands of people were killed here. But despite its bloody past, despite the fact that it's 2,000 years old, every sporting venue built since owes it a massive debt. And every engineer approaching it has the same reaction.
Wow.
Amazing, isn't it?
The first thing that strikes you when you see the Colosseum from the outside is just the scale, the height of that building above the ground.
It is a massive structure, and it's meant to proclaim the wealth and the power of Rome. The most important thing was keeping the masses happy. Keep them entertained, and this is the way to the hearts of the people.
Though it was always a place of barbarity and excess, its design and construction are highly sophisticated. This is single-minded planning to perform a particular task.
There's very few buildings that you know exactly what they are and exactly what they do just by looking at the plan, but the Colosseum is one of them. Looking at this, you know that it's a stadium, yet the design is nearly 2,000 years old. Now, either since then everyone has been copying this idea, or everyone has gone back to the fundamental principles about what functions a stadium needs to fulfill. They end up with something that looks very like the Colosseum.
So how did they arrive at this design? What was going through the minds of the men who planned and built the Colosseum? After all, their building was the first. They set the blueprint.
I've been involved in building several large international stadiums, and they all have similar problems, similar opportunities too.
It's always been about handling crowds. Huge numbers of people converging in a single place at a single time. The Colosseum was built to hold a crowd of 50,000.
Large crowds have to get into these buildings very safely and leave very safely. So the first thing you need to consider in the design of a stadium is how you get people into their seats in a very direct line and safely. And that's why you have lots of openings in the outside wall of a stadium.
Clearly, the Colosseum's builders were thinking the same thing when they put in 80 openings at ground level. 76 are numbered entrances.
The next consideration is that everybody who gets to their seats has to have a good view of the action. And that means that you need a seating bowl. You need this sort of curved shape, which creates a triangle for the structure with the heaviest load on the outside.
There's a very clear reason why this design hasn't changed in almost 2,000 years. It's the only way to make sure everyone can see. Cut through the stands and you see a triangular cross-section. All the weight is focused down the outside. The choice of material is everything.
In a modern structure, that outside frame is made of steel or reinforced concrete. But in this case, it's just made of stone.
So this is the brief. Build a stone wall 150 feet high. It's got to be strong enough to carry a serious load, but not so massive that it collapses under its own weight or sinks into the ground below. And that's a challenge in any age.
And they could have done it in a number of ways. One is to have built a solid wall, but that would have been far too heavy, put extra load on the foundations.
The builder's answer was to reduce the weight by punching 240 holes in the outer wall. But there's something else here. These are arches, a shape you see time and again in Roman construction. They give the Colosseum its distinctive shape, but they're not easy to construct. Were they merely chosen because they look good? Or is there another reason? In his field lab in Lafayette, Louisiana, Chris Carroll and his team are going to find out. It's time for a little experiment.